Howdy everyone. So I'm finally getting around to answering all the questions for this Q&A video, and there's quite a few of them, and I'm answering every single one of them, so it's probably going to take a while. This may even be a two-part video if it ends up long enough, so without further ado, let's get straight into it. Soda asks, what are some countries you want to visit in the future? And the truth is that I'm not much of a traveler, and I don't really have any countries that I really want to visit. I just like staying put where I'm at. Don't like spending a whole lot of time traveling back and forth. So if I do travel somewhere, I want it to be for a significant amount of time, like when I went to Colorado a couple summers ago and I stayed there for 2 months. Otherwise, I just like staying put wherever I'm at home. Kyle asks, what is your job / how do you make your money? My job and my primary source of income is to be an assistant coach for cross country and track and field at the collegiate level. I'm not a full-time coach or anything, so I don't make a ton of money off of this, but it's enough for me to live off of because I live very cheaply. And then the other source of income is smaller, much smaller. It's this YouTube channel. Make a little bit of money off of this, not a ton, but it is enough to help me out with paying some bills. Yan asks, will you flex your muscles for us? Sure. You might not be able to see it, but I'm flexing. Andy asks, who is your favorite pro runner? And there's so many runners that I like out there, but to name a favorite is pretty tough, but there are always a couple different guys that come to mind when I think of this, and the first one is always Chris Derrick. I've just been following him since his collegiate running days at Stanford. Really wanted to see him win an NCAA title, but was unfortunate to go against some of the greatest runners in NCAA history, like Lowie Lang. So I really wanted to see him win that indoor 3K. That was his last indoor race ever, and he's had a fair amount of setbacks since his college days, but he's always somebody that I'm pulling for. Another one that I really like that just seems like an all-around great guy is Nick Willis. He's just a very great competitor at the international stage in the 1500, and I think he does things the right way and just sets a good example. On the women's side, I'd probably have to pick Jenny Simpson once again, just because she seems like a really good person, and she's a very great competitor on the world stage, so she's always fun to watch. Ethan asks, girlfriend? No, I don't have a girlfriend, never have had one. Being in a relationship is just something that's never really been that important to me. Perfectly fine being a happy single dude, so not saying I'll never be in a relationship, but I'm just not seeking one out. Nick asks, do I prefer running in the hot or the cold? Not racing, but just running on a day-to-day basis, and that's a tough one because I would say I enjoy running in the heat more, but the stuff that I need to do to be a better runner, the stuff that I respond really well to, like the long runs and the lactate threshold work, the cold weather is much more conducive for that kind of work, so I don't know what I'd pick. I'd probably hot, cold-ish, medium. Raphael asks, do I have Bekele or Kipchoge in London? And if I had to bet right now, I would bet on Kipchoge, just knowing their marathon histories, and Kipchoge's marathon consistency is absolutely unrivaled, but if we get to race day and they're both healthy and both very fit, I would probably lean towards Bekele because I think he has the most talent and the ability to kick at the end, which I don't know that Kipchoge does. We haven't seen him necessarily in a sprint finish or anything, or even competing with somebody in the last mile to half mile of a race, so I'd take Bekele if they're both very fit. Bruce and High Plains Bear are asking what it's like to be the best YouTuber in the world. Well, I'm just a normal person like everybody else. I put on one sock at a time, but the difference is when I have my socks on, I make the best YouTube videos ever. That's sarcasm if you didn't catch it. Sal asks, when are you going to break 30 minutes in the 10, bruh? Best case scenario, probably in a year. More realistic scenario, probably never, but that is one of my lifetime running goals, so I'm going to shoot for that. Whether I get it or not, I don't know. We'll see in the next several years. Brendan asks, what degree did you earn at college? My undergraduate degree was in mathematics education with a coaching minor, and then my master's was in sport management. Jorge asks, what is the hardest distance to run? Well, the hardest distance to run is just the longest that you can possibly go, but the hardest distance to race, that's a different question. So out of things that I've raced, or at least done like a time trial of some sorts, because my unofficial marathon wasn't exactly a race because it was only myself, I'd probably have to rank the marathon as number one, Number 2 would probably be the 3,000 meter steeplechase from the only time that I did that in college. And then number 3 would probably be the 800. The marathon might be below those if I didn't bonk in the last 3 miles, but the last 3 miles of that were very, very difficult. So that's why I ranked that number 1. Brandon asks if spike shoes are a must for distance races on the track, and they are absolutely not a necessity. I actually prefer flats for 10K and 5K. I could go either way on the 5K, but flats just seem to suit me better. So as long as you have some kind of lightweight racing shoe, you'll be fine. Niku asks if there is a need for a cool down after a long run. And no, if it's just a regular long run, even one that you're picking up a little bit at the end, you don't need a cool down. But if you're doing like a marathon specific workout with a good deal of quality in the middle, then you probably do want to cool down. If not to get the junk out of your legs, then just to extend the length of your session to specifically prepare you for a marathon. Graham asks, when do multiple grains of sand become a pile of sand? Well, Graham, that is a fantastic question. First, we need to take a look at the definition of pile, which as a noun, it is a heap of things laid or lying one on top of another. So I think technically you only need 2 grains of sand to make a pile of sand as long as one is on top of the other. But obviously that's very hard to do because they're so small. So as long as you have multiple grains of sand next to each other and they're lying on top of another, then that's a pile of sand. As demonstrated with salt, here are multiple grains of salt not in a pile, and here is the smallest pile of salt that I could manage to make. Rory asked 2 questions. 1 is any advice for injury prevention, and 2, what's your recovery routine? My main advice for injury prevention is to get enough sleep and to eat a proper diet that is enough and has a nice balance of carbs and proteins and fats. If you don't do those things right, then you're putting yourself at a greater risk of injury, and it really doesn't matter how much foam rolling or icing or massaging or compression that you do. You gotta sleep and you gotta eat. So my main routine for recovery is getting something to eat as soon as possible after training and getting a good night of sleep. Foam rolling when I wake up in the morning seems to help get my blood moving and get me warmed up for the training that I have as well. Sci-Fi Girl asks, what running apps do you recommend? And I don't think I have any running apps, so I can't recommend anything. Sorry. Inside Runner asks, how old are you? Coming up on 28 and a half years old this month. Jemery asks, do you still aspire to qualify for the Olympic Trials Marathon? Yes, of course I do, but just not for this one because obviously the window has closed at this point in time and I wasn't even fit enough any time in the past to be able to qualify, so gotta wait till the next cycle. So I've got quite a bit of time to develop myself as a distance runner before I can give that any sort of serious go in the future. Jordan has a couple questions. The first one is, what are your favorite hobbies outside of running at the moment? So this is kind of a fun question because there's always something that I'm really interested in outside of running, but it's usually only just one thing and I'm trying to be the best that I can be at that thing. So when I'm training at a really high level and things are going really well, usually with my free time, I don't like to do anything except for rest and be lazy, but obviously you can't be training hard all the time, so usually there's one other thing that I like to occupy my time with. Right now that's actually Guitar Hero. I've picked that back up in the past week or so after doing a lot of that in high school and not playing a bunch through college and my post-collegiate years, but just kind of fun. I enjoy it. Don't worry though, before anybody says learn how to play a real guitar, I do know how to play a real guitar. In fact, Guitar Hero is what got me into real guitar. So throughout college, one of my main hobbies was actually making guitar covers of old video game music. I'm kind of a metalhead, so most of it would be metal. But that was just a big process of self-teaching guitar and learning how to mix and produce music. So had a lot of fun doing that. Another thing that I really got into in the past was collecting old video game stuff, like vintage video games. My first video game console that I ever played was a Super Nintendo, and I love it. So throughout college, I think it was more the thrill of the hunt, like finding old cartridges or even old boxes, and just having the physical thing in my hand and finding the good deals on them was really fun. So I do have a pretty large collection of vintage Nintendo stuff. Nowadays that's pretty obsolete because there's this thing called the Super Nintendo Mini Classic where you just put any game you want on that, so it's not really about playing the games, but it's more just about having the games for me. And then my other biggest hobby mainly comes into play during the summer, but I absolutely love disc golf. Started playing that in high school and didn't play a ton throughout college, but in the summer I probably play 3 to 5 times a week. Absolutely love it. Great thing to do outside of running, and probably something that I'll do nearly daily once I'm done being a competitive runner. So Jordan's second question is, what shoes have you used throughout your running career? I used ASICs throughout most of high school and college. That was the ASICS GT 2100 series, and I think it was my 5th year of college where they stopped making that and changed it to the 2000 series, and I just decided that was a good time to try a different pair of shoes. So our team shoes at that time were the Nike Vomero 9, and I tried those, loved them, exhausted those shoes over the next couple years, bought as many pairs as I could, and since then it's been more just like whatever I can find that's a decent deal and is a decent neutral shoe. So I've tried like the Adidas Solar Drives, I've tried Saucony Ride 10s, I've used different pairs of Vomeros, I've tried the Pegasus, just kind of a hodgepodge of different neutral shoes. And Jordan's third question is how to stay motivated during hard training, and it's not too difficult for me because this whole distance running thing is very intrinsic for me. I get joy out of it just by trying to be the best I can be, so I don't really have to search too much for external things to keep me motivated. In fact, the hard training is the stuff that really motivates me the most. It's probably more challenging to hold myself back and keep myself from working too hard to where I get injured, so not really an issue for me. Baltzu asks, do you have a contract with the university that restricts you to receive gear for free or to sign a sponsorship deal? You are talented enough to not need to buy Vomero 12s. No, I don't have any kind of contract like that. Truth is that I have had a few offers in the past, not for sponsorships or anything, but just to give me some free gear, and I've turned them all down just because I don't really want free gear if it's not something that I'm going to use, and all the stuff I was offered, I didn't really see a need for it. I wouldn't say I'm talented enough to not need to buy my own shoes, but this YouTube following kind of makes me look better than I am, I guess, and so that's why I've gotten some offers in the past. But if somebody offered me something for free that I knew I was going to get good use out of and that I was an advocate for, then I would probably take it, but I don't have any problem with having to buy my own shoes just like any other normal person. Oliver asks, favorite shoes ever? I actually just mentioned these, and that's the Nike Vomero 9, and I'm actually super stoked about this because I actually found a sweet deal on a pair of Nike Vomero 9s, and I can't wait to start wearing these again. Chicken King has a couple questions, and one of them was actually just answered. What is your favorite training shoe if money was not a factor? That's the Nike Vomero 9. And the other question is, in high school, what kind of mileage were you running in the off season? I don't remember a whole lot of details about my high school training because I didn't keep a log, but I do know that the summer before my senior year of cross country, I'm pretty sure I got up to about 50 miles in a week, and then the winter before my senior track season, I knew I was going to be running in college, I knew where I was going to be running in college, so I wanted to start adapting to the training and bridging that gap a little bit, so I built up to a peak of 60 miles in a week, but during season I was probably more like 30 to 40 miles per week. Before that, my freshman, sophomore, junior year, probably just lower. I don't know how much, but not as high as that. JD asks, how do you find good deals on shoes / running gear? The most consistent way is to just check Running Warehouse on occasion and see what they have on clearance. You just got to be okay with buying older models of shoes, which is fine. They're perfectly good shoes. They were perfectly good a year ago, so why can't they be good now? And just Google search for some like Running Warehouse discount codes. They did away with some of the better ones, but usually you can still find like a 10% off for clearance items, so that's probably the most consistent way. Now I've got a few questions about PRs. Max asks, have you ever run, or what is your PR in the 400? I ran an open 400 my senior year of high school, and I ran 58.03. I've never run faster than that. Shutar asks, what is your mile PR? My official mile PR for a 1 mile race is 4:26 on a 300 meter indoor track. But my best race of that type, like 1500, 1600, or the mile, is probably a 4:23.2 1600. And then Brandon asked, what were some of your high school PRs? So I was 58 in the 400, like I just said. I was 206 for a split in the 800. My 1600 was 434, and my 3200 was 952. In cross country, I was about a 1630 guy for a 5K at best, so those are my high school PRs. Brandon also asks, how many ounces do you usually drink a day? Ideally, I shoot for 3 32-ounce bottles, so getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 ounces of water. But sometimes I forget. That's probably one of the things I'm worst at, is remembering to hydrate. On average, I probably get 2 of those bottles a day, maybe 64 ounces, but I do get some other fluids like milk with a bowl of cereal, or maybe just a glass of chocolate milk after a run, maybe a little Gatorade, and of course you get more water through different foods and such, so, but water alone, I probably get 64 ounces a day. Nicholas asks, best generation of Pokemon? My favorite is definitely Gen 1. That's just what I grew up with. I started with it. I've only played Gen 1, 2, and 3, and if I had to rank those, I'd probably go 1, 3, 2. My 2 cents asks, what do you think of Nike's Vaporfly / Next%? Should they be banned or not? I actually made a couple videos about this topic about a year ago, and my thoughts haven't changed on it too much. Nowadays, I just hate that everything is all about the shoe. I kind of just wish this technology was never invented in the past or in the future, and it was more about just providing protection for your feet and having a lightweight shoe, so the performance could be more about what the person is doing rather than what the shoe is doing. I know right now we're just in a phase where this shoe is very new and advanced technology, and in several years it'll probably go back to being about the person's performance rather than the shoe, just because it'll be a pretty common thing. Should they be banned or not? I'm not really smart enough to answer that question, but obviously they did just come out with the ruling that they did put some restrictions on the shoes, so they're eliminated to a 40mm stack height, and you can only have 1 carbon fiber blade in a shoe. So that does ban what the Alpha Fly would have been, but it makes the Next%'s fine. Christy asks, what advice do you have for a 50-year-old lady that wants to run a half marathon without needing to break any records, just want to finish them without shutting the event down? So for anybody out there that's wanting to run a half marathon or marathon just to finish it and not to run it for a certain time, basically my main piece of advice would be to do mostly easy running throughout the week, maybe run every other day even, and to build up your weekly long run, just to where you can handle running for that long. There's not really even a need for doing harder workouts or anything, you just gotta be generally fit, so that just means running consistently. Anthony has a few different questions. The first one is, what are the goals for this track season? The main goal is to run a PB in the 1500, 5K, and 10K. Also, how do your phases differ? Basically, just the type of work that changes, the priority changes a little bit. So like the first phase is mostly lactate threshold work. Second phase, more VO2 max work, but you're still doing some lactate threshold work. The structure of the week changes a little bit, but generally you're still doing 2 or 2.5 quality efforts per week. So just shifting the focus from one type of workout to another. Joey asks, what are the biggest challenges in continuing to run post-collegiately? I would say the biggest challenge for most people training post-collegiately is probably finding a way to keep them accountable, because in most situations you don't have like a set team anymore. You don't have a bunch of teammates. Even though you may have training partners, you don't really have anybody relying on you. So, you know, if you don't go out there and put the training in, you're only hurting yourself rather than other people. So that's probably the big one. For most normal people, and this doesn't apply to me, it's probably finding the time to do everything. So for people that have a full-time job and have a family, finding the time to put in the mileage and recover is probably the toughest thing. And back to the accountability thing, because you don't have any teammates relying on you, when you get a really crappy weather day, like 40 degrees and raining, makes it real tough to get out the door for the training session, but you just gotta remember why you're doing it, and that'll get you out the door. It's Key asks, I want to stop running after high school, but I want to get all-state by my senior year, so I was wondering how many miles I should hit for my max my senior year. That is far from enough information to accurately answer that question for you. So a very general answer for this question is to run as much as you can while being able to stay healthy and compete your best when it counts. Yahir asks, what are your favorite workouts that you recommend for 1600, 3200, and 5000? And there are no magic workouts out there, but the biggest thing I'm a believer in is the lactate threshold work. I think that'll get you most of the way there to a peak performance, and then you just top that off with some speed work and VO2 max work, but lactate threshold work, that's the most important. M. Nelu asks, bread and butter sessions to continuously improve at 5K, 10K without increasing current mileage significantly over a training cycle. Same answers as before. Lactate threshold work, probably the best thing for you. I like doing lactate threshold work in the form of a continuous tempo run, anywhere from 3 to 10 miles or so. And then also splitting it up into repeats and using a 5-to-1 work to rest ratio is really good as well. So doing like mile repeats or 2K repeats or even 2 or 3 mile repeats, something like that. Those are all very, very beneficial. Next question is, what is your favorite type of workout? And I would say lactate threshold workouts are some of my favorites, but my absolute favorite is probably a long run with some form of quality mixed in. So a lot of times that's like going moderate pace over the last half, or maybe just a progressive long run where I get faster over the course of the entire thing. So those are all really fun for me. Philip asks, are VO2 max workouts anaerobic, and what place do these workouts have in marathon training? Yes, VO2 max workouts are anaerobic. As far as what place they have in marathon training, not a whole lot of place. I'm sure there's a lot of great successful marathoners out there that do plenty of VO2 max work, but a guy like Eliud Kipchoge does a lot of marathon pace lactate threshold work, I believe, and then maybe he'll just do some light VO2 max work, like some 400s in the last couple weeks leading up to a marathon. So I'm not very experienced with marathon training and don't know the most about it, so that's all I got. Satoshi asks, how does someone who runs 30 to 40 miles a week at 750 mile pace increase their mileage to 70 miles a week without getting injured? So first, I want you to ask yourself, what is the goal? Is the goal just to run mileage, or is the goal to be the best runner that you can be? And if your goal is to be the best runner that you can be, I would suggest maybe working on increasing the speed of those easy runs a little bit, because at some point you're not going to see a whole lot of benefit just by adding more all the time. So working on your quality is important too. But if your only goal is to just run that mileage, then just recover more, and you can probably surprise yourself, and you can probably just go bang out a 70-mile week. But you should probably gradually work up to it. So just do 2 weeks raising, 1 week down, 2 weeks raising, 1 week down, maybe increase 5 miles a week or so. You probably surprise yourself at what you can do if most of your runs are all just easy. Schmidt Fit asks, ever thought about doing a disc golf tutorial, like how to play, how to throw, or describing the different discs? Not really. I just want to keep this YouTube channel strictly running related. I do have a separate YouTube channel that's called Ben Barrows Disc Golf. I was just having some fun making some different disc golf videos. But as far as this channel goes, I have no plans of that. There are lots of different tutorials out there on YouTube, so if you want to learn, just search for them and you'll find them. Lucky Guy asks, are you a fan of the Athlete Special channel? If so, does he give you motivation at times? I do like Spencer's channel, but the truth is I don't watch a whole lot of running YouTuber videos. I respect the grind and everything, but I don't really need his channel for motivation. I've been doing this distance running thing for over half my life at this point, so I've been doing this a lot longer than people have been making running videos on YouTube, so I don't need those to motivate myself. So on top of that topic, Evan asks, what are your favorite / recommended running YouTube channels? Obviously the Athlete Special is one of those. His name is Spencer Brown. He runs for Georgetown. He's a sub 4-minute miler. Just nice to see the college runner life. Another one is Chase Easterling from Akron. He's a freshman in college. You'll probably find a lot of similarities between him and I, so if you enjoy me, you might enjoy him as well. So then I've got a couple questions about collaborating with other running YouTubers, and that's probably pretty unlikely. I just live pretty far away from most of the other people who do this kind of thing, and usually, like, I was actually at the Brian Clay invite where Spencer ran 3:39 in the 1500, but when I'm there, my focus is coaching, and when he's there, his focus is competing, so I'm not trying to make YouTube videos on that or anything, so pretty unlikely. So Jackson also asks, what is my favorite place to run? So a couple different places come to mind. Back in college in Warrensburg, Missouri, there was this place north of town that was called Hazel Hill Lake, and it was just a place with a lot of winding, gravel, hilly roads. Absolutely loved going out there for a weekend long run with a few guys. One of my other favorite places to run is Gunnison / Crested Butte in Colorado. Just amazing, beautiful place in the mountains. You get the altitude, you get nice soft trails, beautiful scenery, unforgettable experience running there. And here in Pittsburgh, just all the mile section dirt roads are pretty nice too. There's this one specific area about 20 minutes south of Pittsburgh. There's this little town called Crestline, but we call the area Ben's Peak because I actually found that hilly area for our team to train on. So that's a good place as well. Jackson's third question is favorite place to eat. And if I had to pick a favorite place based on cost and taste, it would probably be Hong Kong Express in Warrensburg, Missouri. Just a Chinese takeout place that I ate at a lot of Sunday nights. That was kind of a Sunday night routine. Probably ate there more often than not throughout the year on Sundays. Now the Pittsburgh version of that is called Lotus Express. It's not as good as Hong Kong Express, but it's basically the same idea. Just cheap, filling, tasty Chinese takeout. If cost wasn't an issue, then a nice steakhouse would be great, but I also like Mexican restaurants. I don't know, eating out is good, but I don't do it very often. So on top of that, Caesar asks, how many times per week do you go out to eat, or do you always eat healthy at home? If it's fully my decision and we're not traveling to a bunch of meets and whatnot, I'd say I probably eat out on average maybe once every 2 weeks nowadays. But it is a lot more than that because we're traveling to meets about every weekend this time of year, so I do eat out quite often then, but like I said, if it's my decision and it's just my choice to go out to eat, probably once every 2 weeks. So now continuing on the food topic, Draw Sam asks, are there any foods you avoid for health/training purposes? I wouldn't say there are really any foods that I completely avoid. I think everything in moderation is fine. I don't have a perfect diet. I think having a little bit of unhealthy stuff in your diet is perfectly healthy and more for psychological health than anything, so I just try to do everything in moderation. And then one more question about food here. Brandon asks, what do you highly recommend to eat before a race? Well, I highly recommend something that just you're used to and isn't going to create problems before your race.